Welcome back. Joining me in studio, he ran for a state representative in Fairfield because he thought they were overtaxed. Republican Brian Farnen won a special election to take his seat January 14th. He was just named to the Finance and Bonding Committee as well as the Education Committee, where he will now have a say on how we tax and spend here in Connecticut in the future. Mr. Farnen,
thank you so much for having me.
The facts. We appreciate it. Let's talk transportation. In Fairfield, where you are, you have one of the most congested sections of 95, maybe on the East Coast. Yeah. An aging rail stop in Fairfield as well. Rail is a big issue for commuters into the city, especially from Fairfield. How do we try to pay for these upgrades that are, as we all agree, are long overdue?
Well, I think the good news is both sides of the aisle agree that something needs to be changed. We have underinvested in our transportation for 30, 40 years.
Easily, right?
So I don't believe tolls are the answer. I think we need to talk about structural financial reform first before we start looking to put our hands in the pockets of taxpayers once again. I think also part of the problem is if you look at the most recent toll bill, it doesn't even include trains. So that's really problematic to me.
I think there were so many hurdles to get past in the beginning because if you remember, the governor's plan had 80 gantries in the beginning. It's now been whittled down quite significantly. So maybe he's just trying to get part of it passed now. And then he said the high-speed rail portion of his bill was expensive and he thought it was too much for the voters to swallow. What's your take on that?
So I think we need to get there. We don't need the Cadillac of transportation plans, but I think certain things we need to prioritize. 95, the merit, finding ways to get the New Haven Metro North line to get faster into New York City. I think those are really important. If you want Fairfield County to be the economic engine for the state, you got to give it the tools to succeed.
Let's talk education. You're going to be on the Education Committee, too. We talked to Marco Jakey, the president of Connecticut Colleges and Universities. One of the things Connecticut is considering, free community college for 2 years. Should we be considering that, do you think?
Well, again, great idea. Where's the money to pay for it? Right. So we need to do a better job as a state finding ways to attract young people to stay here. I would love to do additional investments in our cities. I think your typical millennial doesn't want to own a lawnmower or have 2 acres of land, but finding a way to attract them, to keep them here is really important. I don't know if we have the economic and the just ability to just pay for a program right now.
He says that the Pell Grants will pay for a lot of it, and the state will have a minor investment in that. You think that's even still too much at this point?
Well, I'm open to it. Obviously, as a new legislator, I'd like to think that I'm going to bring a fresh perspective, not come in with any, biases right away. So I would obviously listen to any plan like that and see what he has to say.
He's gotten a lot of pushback on, speaking of being more judicious with your dollar, one of the things he'd like to do is consolidate some of the community colleges in overlapping services when it comes to administration. He's gotten a ton of pushback on that. Is that something you'd support?
It depends. I think at the end of the day, it depends on what the plan is. I do think having a local community college is very vital to get those students to attend and to have access to it. So I do have some concerns with the consolidation.
And again, keeping in mind that you're just getting started, bonding is also an issue. They wanted to try to withhold a bonding agreement for local cities and towns until the transportation was figured out. But as you know, all you have to do is drive around Connecticut. Could be Fairfield, could be Bridgeport, could be up in Waterbury. There are empty factories all over Connecticut. To try to kind of repurpose those, whether it's housing, whether it's a tech startup, it could take bonding money. What's your view on that?
So I do agree with Governor Lamont with his initial thoughts behind the debt diet.
Right.
It seems like with the toll proposals, that's kind of gone out the window. There's now additional money that's potentially being included in that. I think those are to encourage some of the members of his aisle to vote in favor of the toll bill. So at the end of the day, we have a spending problem. We have a debt problem. You look at our budget and the amount of money that the fixed costs that are going for these interest payments. It takes on too much. So I think we really need to kind of rein in our spending.
One of the courses of action that has been stated that you can continue to fill the rainy day fund, and it gets to a certain point of expenditure, then you start paying down that debt over time. That's what Comptroller Kevin Lembo would like to see happen. Right now, the Republicans, your party, want to take some money out of the rainy day fund in the near future to try to pay for this. Where do you fall on that? Considering you have a financial background, where do you fall on that?
So I think the Senate, that's the Senate Republican plan, is basically to use some of that rainy day fund money to pay down some of our more expensive expensive debt and to use that for infrastructure. I think it goes a little too far. Again, we need to prioritize what are the key things that we need to do to get our economy moving forward and get our transportation fixed. Things like the busway between New Britain to Hartford. I think that was probably an unnecessary cost. Let's try to find a plan that maybe is not the Cadillac plan, but the plan that's going to move the state forward and get people to get from either Fairfield to Stamford or New Haven to New York City in less time, or you look at the mess we have in Waterbury with 84. There's certain key areas where I think that we can target without having to spend as much money as either party is proposing.
One of the things that happened, in Waterbury, thank you, where they did literally a 2-mile section of the highway there. They decreased what was a 20-minute drive down to a 2 or 3-minute drive. Do you think that's something that could happen in 95 in Fairfield, where exit 27A is specifically as one of the major backups?
One could hope. I think the issues are a little bit more complex, especially on 95, and even the merit with land use issues on that 2-lane highway. But something needs to be done. I particularly, I think, in Norwalk around Route 7, there's definitely an opportunity there to put in additional lane. So, there are definitely shovel-ready projects that we could do now.
Representative Farnen, thanks for joining us
on Face the
Facts and giving us your time this morning.
All right, excellent.